I'm Alex Ianello, cook, food photographer, and now podcast host. I live for mealtimes like most people, but it's not just the end result that I'm interested in. The recipe, the cook behind the dish, all aspects of putting food on the table interest and inspire me. During my teens, I had my first encounter with adversity. I suffered a brain injury following a bad car accident, forcing me to drop out of education and focus on getting better both physically and mentally. Fast forward 10 years and I've now graduated from culinary school, but injuries have kept me out of professional kitchens, and so I explore my passion in other ways, through writing, photography and building a community around food. Now I'm here with a space to share stories, a place where we can talk about overcoming adversity. Food and cooking have helped me enormously through tough times. Now I want to hear what's helped others. Sit down with me and some familiar faces as we explore food, community, identity, purpose, and success. In each episode we'll be covering the past, the present, and the future as we reflect, show gratitude, and try to find that secret ingredient to dealing with life's challenges. So if you're feeling cannelloni, come join us for an hour or so here on Just a Pasta Time. My guest today is a personal heroine. Patricia Niven is an award-winning portrait and food photographer and keeper of one of my favourite Instagram accounts, the Chicken Soup Project. Born in Brisbane, Australia, Patricia worked several jobs within the food industry while growing up and attending art school, from serving frozen yoghurt in a mall at 14 to later managing a vegan cafe in the centre of Sydney's LGBT district. At age 21, she bravely booked a one-way ticket to London to pursue her dream of becoming a photographer. Fast forward a couple of decades and Patricia is now one of the most successful and celebrated food photographers in the country. When asked about how she became so successful, she said, "It's about responding to that little spark that lights up when something really interests you and trying to follow that spark." Patricia Niven, welcome to Just a Pasta Time.
Oh, thank you, Alex. That's a lovely intro. It's funny hearing about your history. How did you find all that out?
Well, I did some digging. It must be condensing it all into a paragraph. Must be funny to hear as well.
That's amazing.
Well,
I forgot
thank you
about
for
the
doing
frozen
this.
yogurt. Oh, it's a pleasure.
Did you? Reminding you of your own history. I love that. Well, thanks for being here. I am really excited to be talking to you. As I said to you before we started recording, you are one of my favourite food photographers. I love your work. I love your Instagram, and I followed your career. On that note, before we start, I feel like we should acknowledge the fact that you recently won Best Photographer at the Fortnum Mason Food Awards. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. That was
What an achievement.
quite a surprise.
And you beat off some stiff competition.
I did. My very good friend, Matt Russell, who's wonderful, a really, really great photographer, and another photographer, Hugh Johnson, who has a long, successful career. So it was, it's very special. And it was a really beautiful night to see lots of people. That I haven't really been out much for the last few years because I had a baby, and so that was one of my big nights out.
Good. Oh, hey, what a way to get back into the swing of things.
That was so
what a night out
good. Yeah.
Was it a validation for you, sort of personally and professionally, or was it one more than the other? Or do awards kind of, you don't want to get caught up in it and you just think they're nice to have, but, because I think we get a bit British about things and a bit embarrassed when we're, commended for our work, and you don't want to take too much notice and seem big-headed, but it is an amazing achievement and you should celebrate it.
I did feel very happy about it. I'm saying that the award was for even getting it together to enter the competition, because it takes me anyway quite a lot of time to enter these things, because it takes a while to make the selects, and you can only enter 3 pictures, so I go round and round and round for weeks on end and bore my girlfriend with, what do you think about this, what do you think about that, what do you think about this? And then go back to the beginning and then go back to the end. And so a bit of me is just like, well, I'm pretty happy to get an award for doing that. She's probably pretty happy about it too. But it was just, I don't know, you never think that, I never think that anybody's paying any attention to anything that you do or I do, because it's not very public, I suppose. It's not like some of the people I work with have a very public persona. I don't feel like I'm that kind of person. So to have people and colleagues and people within your industry, you know, say, we see you, that's very special. And it's also, it's for me, but it's also all the people that I work with and collaborate with, really, because many of the pictures, the bulk of the pictures that I make are not me in a room by myself. There's a team. There's a team of people, maybe not many, but there's always a team. And without them, there's no pictures.
Sure, yeah. It's all the people in the background too. So I wondered if I could just go back to that little quote that I finished the introduction on of yours. What do you think, it's a big question, but what do you think it is about photographing food that gets you so excited and you're so passionate about, do you think?
I like that it's alive. Maybe that it's not actually one when you're taking a picture of it, but I like something about, I talk about this sometimes, that I think everything is very interconnected. And I think that food is obviously, and anything that was living is very much part of that. So I like being able to participate in recording the life of something, I think. And I'm a Virgo. I'm an earthy person. So I feel very connected to produce and the land. And my dad was a cowboy. Randomly,
really?
He grew up
Wow.
in Liverpool, UK Liverpool, and went to Australia when he was 17 to be a cowboy in the outback, which he did for 11 years in the 1940s and 50s. So he used to take us to farms, like petting farms, I suppose, a bit bigger than a city farm. But I just feel like that all of that is part of the connection as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've said this in a video before, that I feel like the food talks to me. The food and the produce talks to me when I'm taking pictures, which makes me sound like a bit of a mad person, but I don't care.
No, I see where you're coming from, and that your father moving to Australia to be a cowboy, it makes your story make a lot more sense to me, which we'll get onto later now, but that's really interesting. So we like to start each episode with a quick fire round. It's just a few this or that questions. Some are food related, some are work related. So the first one is bread or pasta?
Oh, that's a cruel thing to make a decision about.
It's not easy, is it? I know.
It's really not. Can you answer this question? Can you answer it?
I kind of flip between the two depending on what mood I'm in. And
that's what I want to say as well.
Yeah.
But today I'm going to say bread.
Okay, it's a bread day today.
Yes, kind of a sourdough.
I suppose bread's more versatile, isn't it?
Well, you say that. I've just shot a book about pasta. Actually, I shot one last week and one I've just received in the post. It's pretty versatile. Yeah, I don't know.
Some of the stuff in there is pretty versatile. Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. I'll be interested in that. Next one is dark and moody or bright and vibrant?
Oh, God.
Another difficult. They're all difficult ones.
This is very difficult, yes.
I make these questions and think they're quick fire, but I think, how can you expect someone to answer these in 10 seconds, you know? But it's okay. We'll take our time.
Some people are really they're just definite, aren't they, in their decision making. I'm really like, maybe we'll go here, maybe we'll go there. But I think probably dark and moody is my default.
Yeah.
If we're talking about pictures.
When I think of you. Sure.
Okay. Oh,
sure.
good.
Which, it was a compliment. It's my preferred style as well. So the next one is flat white or espresso martini.
Oh, well, I mean, it's the same. It's like, what time of the day are we talking?
Well, I need to be more specific, don't I?
I've had a flat white. I would be available for an espresso martini in a few hours' time.
Sure. Okay, good answer. I'll take that. Next one, This one's cruel. Brisbane or London food scene?
I think I'm too out of touch with Brisbane to answer with any accuracy, although I have just seen that a really great restaurant from Sydney has moved to Brisbane, or the founder has, and that made me think, oh, I bet there's some really interesting things going on. But I'll be there in September, so I will answer you in September. Let's say London for now.
Okay. Next one, cheese board or cheesecake?
Cheese board. Oh, I know the answer.
Well done. That was quite definitive as well. Are you more savoury than sweet?
Yeah, depends. But I think I was more sweet as a teen, and now I'm definitely more savoury. I think I understand cheese a bit more now.
Yeah, the sort of complexity of it. Is, yeah, sure, I'm with you. Next one, globetrotter or homebody?
Both. Coming home after globetrotting, I mean, that's a really good coming home when you
It's a nice feeling.
I do have some globetrotting coming up, so I'm getting excited about that. But yeah, nothing beats coming home after being away.
It's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
love the time away, but you enjoy coming home. Next one, dine in or eat out? Takeaway on the sofa or nice meal in it? That one, okay. You knew the answer to that one.
Yeah, although, this week I went out on Monday, I'm going out on Friday. And it's, like I said, with the awards, I really haven't been out very much in the last few years. And it was good to go out. It was really nice to eat food that you didn't know what it was going to taste like. I love my girlfriend's cooking. She's amazing, and she cooks most of the time for us. But it was really nice to have another flavour and be in a new space that was unfamiliar and see people out in the world. There's something nice about that. But typically, I love eating at home.
And the final one, playlist or podcast? Which do you listen to more when you're getting things done around the house?
Well, it's interesting you mention this. It's been a topic of conversation in the last week because I've been shooting and all my playlists, it turns out, are awful and boring and dated. And I need Matt Russell, my photographer friend, to help me because he is excellent with music. But I don't really listen to podcasts very much except when I'm retouching because I just like being in my own head and my own world. But then I do like those bursts when you get a bit of insight. I don't want it all the time. It's like I don't want the radio on all the time. I do listen to the radio quite a bit.
Speaking to a few other people doing this podcast, it's interesting that because I would say I listen to podcasts more, but I think other people have said that it's a tempo thing. If I need to get things done and I whatever it is, I've got a house to clean, I'm going to put music on. If I'm pottering away, like you said, retouching photos, you kind of want a slower, calmer pace, don't you?
Yeah, and something that you can get into. I've actually been listening to Stanley Tucci reading his most latest book, Taste, I think.
Yes, yeah.
I've listened to him read that a few times because there's something about somebody, because he reads out a recipe. Maybe I haven't actually seen the book, so maybe it's one recipe a chapter. But hearing somebody read a recipe out, like, half a teaspoon of sugar, a cup of oil, it's very restful. And then hearing stories about Italy is just lovely, and his growing up, and that's the only audiobook that I've been listening to, but I have listened to it more than once.
That concludes the quickfire round, or not so quickfire round. I think I'm going to rename it. No, not you. I have it with everyone. So we're going to move on now, and I wonder if we could just go back to your early life for a bit, if that's okay. So as I mentioned, you grew up in Brisbane. Was that with mum and dad? Yeah,
mum and dad and a sister nearly 2 years younger.
Younger sister. What was life like for little Patricia?
Brisbane was kind of in the late 70s and early 80s considered a big country town. So it felt familiar, I suppose, sort of safe and familiar, not very diverse or challenging, maybe, but sort of, I suppose, simple and safe. I think that's how Brisbane felt. And then within my family, my parents still live in the same house that I grew up in, which is quite mad. Yeah, I guess there's just lots of history in their neighbourhood for me. Whenever I go back or when I think about it, there's lots of, photographs of Easter egg hunts and Christmas presents and stuff around the garden. And yeah, there's family history that's really, things are unchanged. It feels very familiar.
And who was cooking and what sort of food were you eating?
Mostly Mum was cooking. Dad was working. Mum did work when I was started work when I was a teenager. She would make a weekly menu. I just remember her saying it was always driving her crazy thinking about what she was going to make. And I remember the menu being put up on the wall in the kitchen, and that Friday evenings became Chinese takeaway evening, which was great.
Right, yeah.
I think everyone thought that was a great thing. Not that we didn't like Mum's cooking. And I've been trying to think about what was on that list other than spaghetti bolognese and maybe macaroni cheese and kind of a Indian curry night that featured lots of desiccated coconut and sliced bananas and mango chutney. I'm not sure what else was. I need to ask her. Oh, rissoles. Do you know what a rissole is?
I've heard of them. I don't know what they are.
I don't know why it's a really Antipodean thing. Sort of fried leftovers, not quite a meatball, often with meat in it.
Sort of bubble and squeak vibes.
Yeah, but they look like a mini hamburger.
Oh, okay.
Kind of. Fried.
They sound tasty.
They are quite tasty, actually. What else did we have? Oh, lamb chops. Kind of meat and 2 or 3 veg. And we were growing some vegetables as well, which I really liked doing. I remember being about 10 and being quite involved in growing things to eat.
It's a great thing to get kids into, isn't it? I think that
so
stays
good
with young kids.
Definitely. It's so, even now, it's just to put seeds in soil and then a week later and then 2 weeks later and the green just shoots up and it's really exciting.
It gives you an appreciation for food, like a new perspective, doesn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, it does.
And what was school like for you as a child?
I remember primary school, but I don't have any big memories about it in a way that it was, I do remember when I was about 10 or 11 that we would have to do, the whole school had to do aerobics outside in the quadrangle. And some of the girls in my class or the year above, they would choreograph the routines. And the whole school would have to do aerobics to like Michael Jackson, which now seems a bit inappropriate, or Cyndi Lauper. And I mean, that was quite fun, I suppose. It was I don't know if other schools were doing that kind of thing, but I have a feeling that one of the teachers was an ex-army guy and they seemed to think that we all needed to bounce around in the morning before school, which was probably quite a good thing.
Yeah, get all that energy out of your system.
Exactly.
Well, my school certainly didn't do that. It was as exciting as that.
And then I went from that school to a private school, girls' school. It's weird because when you're just in it, it's just what you're doing, I suppose. But every few years, if I get a chance to reflect on it, it's sort of odd. I don't know how I feel about single-sex schools, really. But I suppose that's where I discovered that I liked other girls. There wasn't really much option.
Yeah, I was going to ask you where your sexuality came into it, because I think for me it's hard enough growing up being gay, lesbian, trans, whatever, but in a same-sex school, because I mean all my friends growing up were girls.
Yes.
I think as is the case with a lot of gay men, so I don't know how I would have coped in a single-sex school. I think it would have been magnified and I would have thought people are going to know, it's going to be much more obvious than in a mixed school. Yeah,
I think depending on the school you're in, that can be really difficult. And it depends how othered you get and how okay or not okay that is, I suppose. I don't think I really thought about it too much until one of the girls in my class when I was about 14 said, "Oh, you're such a lemon," which is such a funny expression. I was in about 1989. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, I am. And just being super into this woman, or other girl, young woman, who was 17, who was in the last year of high school. She knew that, and she didn't care. And we were really close friends, but nothing else at that time. And I just remember thinking it was kind of like, whatever. And then going into art school, and I think the week I went into art school, I probably sent letters to some of my friends from high school saying, oh, by the way, I'm bisexual. And I didn't hear from anyone. And then a friend of mine from primary school was just like, oh, yeah, I mean, I knew that ages ago, because she came out probably when we were in primary school. So it was nice. It never felt like a really sort of big thing. I don't think I've ever consciously said anything to my parents, but Sarah and I have been together for, I don't even know, 23 years.
Wow, a long time.
Yeah. So I think they've probably got the gist of it by now.
I think that's how it should be, though. And it's interesting that you said, your friend said, well, yeah, I already know that. It's always the case, isn't it? You're trying to hide
Absolutely.
it so badly, but everyone else knows. I don't know. It's waiting for ourselves to be okay enough with it to tell other people, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I guess if you don't see other people around you, or no one's telling you what they are, then, and there was no internet, anything. So the only place you could see things was music videos, TV, movies.
So at age 21, you decide to book a one-way ticket to London with no real idea of what you're going to do or how you're going to live there. Why London?
I think when I was about 12, I realised that I could get a British passport. Both my parents have British passports. And so I thought, I'm going to do that. And then I was working so I went to art school in Brisbane. I finished high school, went to art school in Brisbane, did 2 years there, dropped out, didn't finish the last year because I did a work placement between the first and second year in a photography studio in Sydney, which is only an hour's flight away or a 15-hour drive away, which is what my boyfriend at the time and I did. It's a very boring drive. I don't recommend it.
The things you do when you're young.
Exactly. It's not an exciting road trip. It's a boring drive. Unless you stopped at all the beaches on the way down the coast, which would be a nice trip. So I did work placement and really loved being in a photography studio. There were different people every day. There were two photographers who ran the space that I was work experiencing at, and one of them was a complete sweetheart, Richard Peake, and he was very welcoming, and I went out on shoots with him and I was so clueless and he was just so kind. And when I decided that I wasn't going to finish my last year of art school, I got to Sydney, drove there with Paul, my then boyfriend, called the studio, and Richard, I think it was a Friday, and Richard said, oh, come in and start on Monday, which is amazing. That's my recollection of it anyway. He might feel differently. Yeah, he was just really sweet. So I'd go out on shoots with him, and he shot a whole variety of mostly people-led things. And it was just really good seeing how what we'd been taught at art school, what that looked like in practice. I said, not just doing exercises for assessment purposes. I didn't really understand how you could assess creative work. I found that quite difficult at art school. And then the last year, we had to, the idea was that you're going to write 10,000 words about the photography you're going to do for the rest of your life, as I understood it at the time. And I wasn't very good at writing essays, and I found the whole thing a bit overwhelming. So going to Sydney just felt like, I just really liked the practicality of it and the excitement of it. And then once I was in that studio, my housemate at the time got in with another studio, And I ended up moving over there and helping them grow into a bigger sort of complex of studios. And it was a place where Elle Macpherson and Kylie Minogue and Baz Luhrmann and, anyone who was doing anything would come to be photographed. Pierre and Gilles, when they came from Paris. It was, kind of the height of creative excitement. And so then I met lots of people from here, from the UK, who were going there for work, and then who were really, I can't remember if the work visa was 1 or 2 years, but they were all gutted when they had to leave. And I think that really reinforced how fortunate I was that I had a passport, a British passport, and that I should go. And I was starting to work a little bit as a photographer when I left Sydney. I mean, it's such a ridiculous self-assessment. At the time, I was like, I know that if I stay in Sydney and I do okay, ideally quite well, sort of by the time I'm in my late 20s, I don't think I'd have the energy. I knew I wanted to go to London, and I thought, I just don't think I'd have the energy to basically start from scratch. And, once I got to London. So I thought, I may as well just do it, because I know it's what I want to do. So I think it was probably quite an accurate assessment, really.
It sounds like you knew yourself very well from a young age. You sound pretty fearless, and I mean it's one thing at 18 move into a different city to go to university, but to move to the other side of the world, it is pretty ballsy. Do you think there was a part of you that, because you had that British passport, you already felt a little bit British and that made it easier?
Absolutely. And my parents, but particularly my mum, she grew up in East Africa, but, I guess under colonial situations. And so they were very British. And both my parents lived here in the 60s. And my mum in particular talked a lot about London in the 60s and how much she loved it. And so I think that was a huge factor as well in just thinking understanding that it was available to me and worth pursuing and something that needed to be seen. I think that was what she really gave me with her. And there was a huge map in their house, huge, that every time you went to the bathroom, it wasn't in the bathroom, but you'd see it on the way in and way out. And I think something about seeing the world, and even though London's not the world, it's quite a good representation on a good day. I think something about knowing that there was more than Brisbane was quite a gift that she has given me.
It sounds like they obviously sound very supportive of what you wanted to do, but also trusted you enough to know that you've got your head screwed on and you're going to make it work, So it's nice to hear.
I think that's a nice thing to say. I'm going to make sure they listen to it. But I do think I think they have been like that, actually. I think they have been, they have refrained from commenting a lot, particularly when I had multiple piercings and many different colours of hair. I never heard, take that out, or what do you think you're doing, or you look pretty when you're X, Y, or Z. They have been quite...
They gave you that freedom.
Yeah, they've been quite observational, I think, which is quite fortunate. I feel quite fortunate.
So you make it to London, you get work assisting a photographer who works in the music industry, photographing.
No, she was a still life photographer, actually. She was someone I knew from Sydney, so I worked with her in a freelance capacity, but quite a lot, for about 5 years. But while I was doing that, we would go to New York to work quite a lot because she was getting a lot of work in New York. And I was interested in music here. So then I got to do some music stuff there, and I was doing it here. It's all kind of the side hustle, I suppose, at that point. And then I finished working with her and was an agent for a little bit, a photographic agent for a bit, and then a producer for other photographers, but still always shooting on the side. And then I was a creative researcher, which allowed for me to shoot more, and a creative researcher either works inside an ad agency or from home in a way that was, I really enjoyed being at home. I don't think I mix very well with people, I've decided, in an office environment.
Some people aren't made for it, I don't think.
No, I find it a bit strange. But that was good because sometimes I do 2 weeks on and then have a week of shooting lingerie, which was what I moved from music into lingerie. And I was doing a bit of food, just starting to do a little bit of food with St. John restaurant in Smithfield.
So I'm interested in how your sexuality fits into this move and if there were any differences from being openly queer in Australia to London.
I mean, Sydney in the mid to late 90s was the best place to be queer as a woman. Yes, I mean, I know from friends' personal experience that the police were not particularly warm and fuzzy all the time. But then it was also Mardi Gras and alternative Mardi Gras and so many people moving somewhere to be themselves that you always saw people being themselves, which was in a really concentrated area, and that was amazing. And then there's a club night that's still going called Kooky. That was a really transformative venue, not venue because it moves around, but a transformative space with incredible music and a very, well, in the 90s we would have called it a really alternative community. Now it feels like a really dated word, but it was just so accepting of everyone in whatever form they presented themselves. And that was really special. And when I moved here, I thought I would find that. And I didn't. And maybe it was happening, but I just didn't know where it was. I think I was raving. I was kind of part of a rave scene, but it wasn't particularly queer that I remember. And I've sort of had bursts of finding something similar to that, but I don't feel like I ever really found that. That felt like Sydney and the Kooky time felt like a really special 18 months in my life of sort of affirmation and confirmation of it's okay to be yourself. And I think maybe after going through that, almost a baptism, I suppose, maybe I didn't need it as much after that. But then, like last year, I took my toddler to Ducky. They had like a summer pride event in the City of London, and it was a good reminder that it's really good to be surrounded by queers. It's just a really great. I think I haven't been particularly active in finding and being part of queer community. I think I've put a lot of energy into making work. But whenever I do get the opportunity to participate, it's so great.
I think although we know there are a lot of people like us, especially in a massive city like London, I don't think society makes it easy to find other people, and I think especially nowadays it's probably more difficult. But when you are in a group of other queer people, you don't realise, I certainly don't, how small things like if I'm at a bar that is, not a queer bar, and I walk out, I will feel my shoulders drop because I've been so tense in there, because I'm with my partner and I don't want anyone to suspect anything. And you don't realise your body's doing that until you're in a queer space and you think, I don't have any of that. I feel calm.
Absolutely.
It's a lovely feeling, and it's a great reminder of why we need pride events, why we need more queer spaces, not for the party scene, but just to be around other people. It sounds like that experience you had at a young age kind of set you up for the rest of your life, and I think everyone needs that.
I totally agree. And to kind of have a dose of it last summer, it felt like a top-up in some way, that a really essential top-up of shoulders down, everyone in the same place in some way, like literally and metaphorically. And yeah, when you're not around it very much, it is a very special energy to participate in.
So I read that as work for you in the fashion industry began to slow down, your food photography work began to grow. And I'm interested in how is working on, say, a cookbook for someone different to photographing a summer collection for a fashion house, for a designer. How do they differ, or are they quite similar?
My first thought is they are very different in that fewer people are involved in a cookbook, although I suppose technically that's not true, because once it goes into the publishing house, there are lots of people unseen, to me anyway. So, but in fashion, there's often a lot of people in the actual room, and it's not always the creator who's there, because like I was shooting for Agent Provocateur, so the designers would sometimes be there, but they had a lot of other things to do. So, but on a cookbook, the author is nearly always there all the time, all the days, and they're an active participant, whether they're cooking or they don't always cook. The authors don't always cook. There's often a food stylist. But they're definitely participating in the decision-making in a very active way. The idea of that you're creating with a team is the same idea. I actually really liked shooting lingerie. I thought I preferred it to... I had done a bit of fashion, but it wasn't... I don't think I was very suited to that world, and it didn't feel very warmly towards me. And obviously lingerie is still part of fashion, but it was different in some way, and the models were... I really liked the models, and I really liked working in that aspect of the world. I think sometimes the models found it difficult that I was a woman. I think sometimes they were more used to being photographed by men and having a male gaze on them. That was infrequent, and it was something I was conscious of, because I would ask on occasion, and mostly because they're quite young women, I hope this doesn't happen so much anymore, because that was something I found really difficult. But if they were 20, that was good. But a lot of them would say that they felt more comfortable being photographed by a woman, and so I suppose that's the thing that I am looking to create on all my sets, is that people are comfortable and safe, feel comfortable, because an author is... they're bringing their creativity, you're helping them bring their creativity out into the world. And a lot of the time they're quite nervous about that, especially if they've never done a book before. And if they own a restaurant, if they do multiple things, if a book is one part of what they're doing, they're often quite busy and quite stressed, and a book is quite a lot of pressure in quite a small period of time. So I think I feel like my job is trying to make a space where everyone feels comfortable to collaborate together and to say what they feel, and participate in helping someone get their vision and their ideas out into the world.
And I also read an interview with yourself, and someone asked you what your experience of being queer in this industry was like, and you replied, very lonely, which really upset me. I found it really upsetting, but I also understand it. And yeah. I was wondering if I don't know how old that interview was, but if you still feel like that today, or do you think that we're making progress with it?
I think that was for Queers in Food and Beverage with Rachel of Butch Salads, who I love. And that was recorded in lockdown, around sometime in lockdown. It's all a bit of a blur, isn't it? That sort of 2020 into 21. I think since that recording, I definitely feel less lonely, and I think that the landscape has changed quite quickly. But I am struggling to think of more than a few queer food photographers or food stylists or prop stylists, the people who work with me immediately in my realm or in publishing. And I don't know if partly that is people are just low-key living their life and not coming out, because you don't really need to come out.
I agree, you don't have to come out, especially in a professional environment, but equally I think the thing for, if you don't want to, it will be assumed that you're straight, whereas queer people, I know that meeting new people every day, you have to come out every day if you want to talk about your personal life and things like that, and it's exhausting, isn't it? And you are never sure what reaction you're going to get.
I do think that's improved.
Good.
I have to say, I think that's definitely, even in the last 5 years, that it has definitely improved, and that is amazing. Because yes, I do remember maybe 10 years ago thinking, not going to tell that person. This isn't the space to share that with this group of people. Now, maybe it's just because I'm older as well. So I'm a lot less conscious of that now. And so I hope that's partly because, there are pride flags everywhere. Maybe most people have got the memo now.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I hope so.
So I wondered if we could talk about the chicken soup project for a bit, if that's okay.
Please, yes.
Because I think it's such a beautiful idea. For people who may not know what it is, could you tell us a bit about it?
Oh, thanks, Alex. I'm really happy that you like it. It was something that had been on my mind before lockdown that I thought was going to be a video project, which I think it still could be, but I haven't had any time, space, resources to execute that. But in lockdown, it became an Instagram page. And I suppose it was a way of kind of pen paling with people. And I cook. I'm okay. I'm an okay cook. I don't cook a lot, but I do make chicken soup. And I really love it. And all the folkloric conversations about how it, makes you feel better. I'm 100% on board with that. And so it just became, I had COVID right at the beginning of March 2020 or the middle of 2020. And my experience I've had COVID a few times now, has always been that I get something stuck on my head in a loop. It could be a word, it could be a phrase, but it can be there for days and days and days while COVID is at its strongest. And I can't really do much else, and I feel sick, but I've always got this thing in my head, and I had do the chicken soup project in my head. So I started it, I think maybe at the end of March 2020, and I just started messaging friends who were chefs or cooks or home cooks or friends who don't cook, but everybody makes something. And initially I was saying, please, can you share with me your recipe for chicken soup? But then somebody said, oh, I've got this amazing recipe for something about chickpeas, which came from a book. Came from a novel or a memoir. And I just thought, oh my God, that's so great. I have to put that on. And then I made that nearly every week for about 6 months in the second and third lockdowns. And then somebody said, oh, can I share my favourite dessert with you? And I was like, oh, yeah, great. And then the idea was that it was recipes for comfort. So that it's still there. It needs a bit of TLC for me. I haven't given it much time recently. But I look at it about once a week. And every time I look at it, 10 more people are following it, which is just fantastic. So I will, if anybody wants to share a recipe with me for the chicken soup project, I'm accepting recipes. Alex, can you go first?
Absolutely. I'll give you one of mine. I just love the idea. It's such a beautiful idea because it reinforces this idea that food isn't just fuel like a lot of people see it as. It's who we are, where we come from, it's our history, isn't it? And
Completely.
when you're eating a dish and you know the history of it, you've had someone tell you this meant this to me, this person made it for me, it changes the way you taste it as well. It's the whole experience of it. So I love it. I think it's a great idea, and kudos for you for setting that up, because it's brilliant.
Thank you so much. It came from it didn't come from this, but it reminds me, when I said at the beginning it was like having a pen pal situation. In Brisbane in 1988, there was something called Expo 88, and they have them around the world every 4 years. And it was the catalyst for making Brisbane go from a small country town to a city, because thousands of people came. Millions of dollars were invested in this previously sort of light industrial semi-abandoned site on the river in central Brisbane. And you could get a annual or a ticket that would let you go every day for the whole duration of it. And I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 months. And we were fortunate, and we all got to do that. And in the Australia Post Pavilion, because there were pavilions for all these different countries, mostly Commonwealth countries, but yeah, there are some bits of it that were a little bit questionable now, I think. But the equivalent of the Royal Mail Pavilion, the Australia Post Pavilion, had a post box in the middle of the pavilion, and you could press a button on the post box and you got the name and address of a child. Sounds really dodgy, in another part of the world. So as a 12-year-old, pretty much every time I went there, I pressed that button and got somebody else's name and address, and ended up with these pen pals all over the world, who, some of them we wrote to each other for years and years and years. And the Chicken Soup Project kind of reminded me of that you were reaching out to someone who, I didn't know everyone. And I did ask, when people gave me a recipe, please, could you recommend this idea to someone else? So it kind of got passed on. But it definitely sort of connected to the 12-year-old in me wanting to say hi to people people somewhere else, and find out what their life was like.
It's a great way of connecting with other people through food. As we know, that's what food is all about, sharing it with people, and we need more of it. So what is next for Patricia Niven? Because your career it seems to me like just keeps skyrocketing. You keep getting bigger and bigger, and when you think you can't get any bigger, you get bigger. So is there anything else
that's really kind.
No, it's
can I record you? I'm going to listen. I'm just like, I need you in the mirror saying that to me every day.
A little recording positive affirmations every morning.
Yes, that's a great idea.
I'm available for hire. So is there anything else you want to do that you haven't done? Because it seems to me like you've done nearly everything, and it's amazing what you've achieved so far. But is there anything that you feel like you'd still want to do?
I really love cookbooks. I really, really love the process of being on cookbooks. So I hope to be invited to collaborate on more for a long time. I feel like that's a part of the world that I really, really enjoy. I think I'd like to... I'm doing some travel. I'm doing some travel with books this year, which is really exciting, going somewhere I've never been, which is also really exciting, and taking my toddler. We'll see how that goes, but I might, at this point, like we went to Oman last year to shoot Dina Mackey's book, Bahari. Those kind of experiences they're really special. They can be a bit challenging, but that's also part of what makes it great, I think. So travelling with work. I'd also like to do more within the UK, and with... I'm very interested in regenerative farming, soil health, heritage seeds. That I don't think I've had the opportunity to explore in any great depth, and that aspect of growing and producing is really of interest to me. So I don't think I personally want to do it myself, but I would like to record it on someone's behalf or participate in some way that I'm not quite clear about yet. Maybe through a queer farming collective.
It's a great idea. Something to think about.
Something like that, yeah.
So I've just got 2 questions left for you, and then I'll let you go and enjoy the sun while it lasts.
Yes, it's amazing.
So the first question is, if you could distill all the experiences that you've had and give 3 pieces of advice or ingredients that make up a happy and successful life, what would you say?
Kindness, love, and something like knowing yourself or meditation. You know, I think the self-knowing that comes through meditation. I have bursts of practicing meditation and yoga and find that I think life is better for me when I do both those things.
It's one of those things, isn't it, that we know is good for us, and we know how good we feel when we do it, but we just don't make time for it all.
Exactly. So busy.
And that's it, yeah. It gets put to the side. And the last question, and perhaps the biggest question yet, Patricia Niven, what are you having for your tea tonight?
Oh my gosh. That is a very good question. I'm going to have to call my girlfriend and find out what she's making.
Good answer.
But there will be, I'm pretty sure, that pre-dinner there will be crisps and chilled red wine. And then I don't know what comes next. It's very exciting.
That is what they call a girl dinner. Crisps and red wine.
It is, isn't it? Oh no.
No, it's brilliant. It's
There'll be
perfect.
more. Don't anybody write in. There will be more. I just don't know what that is right now.
Well, thank you so much for coming on just to pass the time. You were everything I'd hoped you would be and more. I really appreciate your time and you chatting to me. It's been a great conversation, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm so happy that you asked. It's been such a delight to meet you.
You've been listening to Just to Pass the Time with me, Alex Ianello. Join me again where I'll be setting a place for another fabulous guest, so be sure to tune in. But until then, if you could rate, review and subscribe to the podcast, I would be so very grateful. I want this podcast to be a safe space for open discussion, so feedback and comments are more than welcome. You can come and find me on Instagram at just2passthetime, all lowercase. See you next time.